Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Aaron Trevino here, and we have a wonderful guest from Sacramento, California. We have Ryan Breedwell. How you doing, Ryan?
What's up, guys? I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Absolutely. It's a beautiful Friday, a beautiful day here in Central Texas, and it's great to see you and have you on the show, Ryan.
Same. I wish I could say our weather has been as good as it has been in Central Texas. We have had quite the borderline hurricane weather here. We had my neighbor across the street, top half of their tree blew over into their yard. Power was out for a couple days. So wild times in California if it isn't already that way.
Oh my goodness! Wow. Huh. I guess a little different over here. It was a little chilly this morning. I think when I woke up, it was about 36.
Yeah, that's
And
about what it is here too. Chilly.
Yeah, but the sun's out, clear skies, and it warmed up, so it's always got me in a good mood.
Good.
Yeah, Ryan. But for those of us who aren't familiar with you, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Ryan Breedwell. I'm the vice president of the Capital Planning Group. We are out in Sacramento, California. That's our DBA in this state. Our like nationally recognized name is Foundations Investment Advisors. We have offices in 5 different states: California, Texas, Arizona, Colorado, and the wonderfully magical state of Arkansas. We function kind of as like a family office. And what that means is when people come to us, they kind of want us normally to handle all of their finances. So that means their cash management, their investments, their insurance, their legal stuff, their tax planning stuff. And so we have all of those offerings in-house. I think I had mentioned to you that the majority of like my personal clients fall into the real estate space. A lot of them are realtors, real estate investors, loan officers, fixers and flippers. Years now, we have about $1.5 billion in assets under management, about 14,000 clients nationwide, and just growing and scaling that business has been really fun over the past few years.
Yeah, absolutely, Ryan. So I'm just curious now, are you from Sacramento? Did you kind of grow up in that area?
Yeah, there's a city. If you were to drive from Sacramento north towards San Francisco, there's a city kind of in between Sacramento and in between San Francisco called Vacaville, which is where I am from. I ended up going to school at Sonoma State University, which is kind of in the Napa Valley, Sonoma Valley area. So I'm definitely a wino. I got bottles of wine over here on my desk. And I graduated in 2014, walked in 2015, because if you graduate in fall of 2014, who walks in fall, right? So I had to take what is a Native American multicultural studies class so I could stay one more semester and walk when it was warm with all my friends. And then I moved back to Sacramento fall of 2015, took over at the firm. I had got licensed, I had studied, I did all that, and I took over as VP in October 2015. And I'm sitting here today with a company that's about 4 times the size. We have about 165 advisors, 85 staff, and it's just really fun. I love being able to provide value to people and then be compensated to do so. It's always, I think anybody could say that if you're in a job where you help people and then you get to make a living earning that way, that's really a fulfilling way to go about my day to day.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like that's the cherry on top, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. With the whipped cream.
There you go. There you go. I'm just curious as well, did you know, from a young age that you wanted to work in this sort of industry in finance, or was there any particular moment that was kind of an aha moment where you realized, hey, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, fun story, and we'll keep it short and sweet. I, my whole life, my dad was definitely grooming me to be a financial advisor and to take over his company. And I didn't want it. I was going through high school, never considered it, got into college, still didn't consider it, went to school for business and finance, but never really still considered it. And even when I graduated, I said, you know what? I'm going to get a regular job. What job was I able to find? I was working in car sales at an Acura dealership. I worked my ass off. I was one of the top salespeople, and I made $50,000. And I told myself, no, I'm not going to work this hard to make $50,000. So I went and got all my licensing while I was still working. Once I got all my licensing in, I like immediately quit. And then I transitioned over to working full time at the firm and being the vice president there. My aha moment was when I checked how much money I had made and how hard I had worked, and just saying, this is not a good representation of the time that I spent. And maybe I didn't know it at that point, but I had just realized that I had sold a lot of my time and not got a lot of money for it, and realized that my time was probably and is worth more than that $50,000. If I'm going to work 11 hours a day for 6 days a week, I'm going to get paid more than $50,000. And that was my kind of springboard into saying, hey, Dad, what the heck are you doing and how do I get involved in it? Luckily, I had grown up around a financial advisor. I had been talking about finances my entire life. So just like if my dad was a painter, Bob Ross's son probably didn't have to pick up the paintbrush too many times to figure out how to paint. He just watched it his whole life. It was a pretty quick and easy transition into financial planning, and I have never looked back. And gosh, again, as I've said multiple times on this podcast, I absolutely love it. It's probably one of the most fun areas, and I think I probably feel the same way about my career as you do yours.
Yeah, absolutely, Ryan. I'm really fascinated by not only your story, but also kind of that relationship between, time and money. Could you kind of expand on what you think that relationship is like?
Yeah, my Mr. Miyagi saying goes, and I just was talking to a client about this the other day, and she was like, okay, Mr. Miyagi, you wax on, wax off, but time buys money, because that's what we do when we work for a corporation. We sell our time for a salary. So time buys money. And just conversely to that, money buys time. If we go and look at a person like Bill Gates, or a person that has an epic amount of income, what you'll notice is the amount of time they actually dedicate to their work is actually very little, because their money is dedicating and working for them. So Bill Gates speaks and gets asked to, write books or give his opinion more often than he's actually sitting behind a desk, hard thinking out tasks. He hires people to do that and uses his money to pay those people. He gets the benefit of it, but he uses his money right now, because one asset, and Warren Buffett, not that I'm like a diehard fan of him, love him to death. I think he's just a great guy. He said a very good principle and good concept. And when he was sitting with a bunch of other investors, he said, I'm one of the oldest guys here. So my time is worth way more than all your guys' time, because I have so much of it, but so little of it left to give. So when I give my time, it's I think very long and hard before I give my time to something. And it's easy to, work 20 or 30 years and sell your time for all that amount of time, and you'll get money for it. But could you have gotten more? And most of the time, the answer is yes. And what a lot of my wealthiest clients did is not earn the most while they were giving away their time. But since they realized that they were going to be limited on the amount of time that they could give to a company, because a company can only buy so much of each individual's time, that's your work week, they took that money and decided to put it in areas that money was going to then work for them. And the more money you save, you'll notice that the less and less and less time you have to spend on making money, because your money will start making you money. Where is that crossing point? That's retirement, guys. Hey, I no longer have to sell my time. My money can now make me enough money, and I don't need to sell my time anymore. I can now, act like every day is a Saturday and enjoy my time, because I've saved enough to enjoy my time. The people that don't do that will have to continuously sell their time. And the thing that really starts sucking is you hit this level of diminishing returns very quickly. Meaning, hey, I'm 65 years old and I'm getting the same amount of money as a person that's 44 years old, but I have less time to give. That's not a good usage of my time. So that dollar is not spent very well. When we talk about factor investing, which is what we do with a lot of our clients, we don't just say, hey, I'm going to buy a growth stock. why are we going to buy a growth stock? What if we just bought 60% of a growth stock, 20% of a high dividend stock, and then we bought this sector, this sector, this sector? So now that dollar is being spent more efficiently. We can look at the same thing with our time. How is our time being spent? And are we getting a return on our time as we should be? And I think you would agree, because I'd be guilty of this myself. I find out a lot of the times that I'm not. And so it's just good to recognize that, because ultimately that's what most people do. They sell their time for money and they forget to put some of that money away so that money can start buying them back time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely fascinated by this concept, and I've had my fair share of, those long days where, you're frankly, putting in a lot of hard work and not making that much. Like one of my first jobs, I worked at a car wash, and in South Texas in the middle of the summer, and it's hot,
Yes,
and
sir.
not making too much, right?
Correct. Yeah. And isn't it frustrating when you come to that realization and you've hit this ceiling of $10 an hour or $15 an hour, in some places. And it's like, man, I could spend an hour hitting the phones, and maybe get a real estate deal, and I could make 30 grand. I could wholesale a deal for $5,000 or $6,000 in that hour. So when you figure out ways to spend your time and do it in a way that's more efficient, and then you get good at that, that's when you kind of unlock the financial freedoms that time that money can give to you. Because ultimately, for me, how I see money is it's a tool. It's a tool to purchase other items, to leverage against other items, to make more money. And the more money that I have, just like, the carpenter, the guy that I'm going to call to work on my house has way more tools than me. Those tools allow me to spend less time in areas that I don't want to spend it. I can deploy the tool. I can pay somebody to do the maintenance around my house. I can pay somebody to do this, and my money is going to recoup that loss fairly quickly. So if you can't tell, I'm a huge proponent on making sure that our money is working for us, but also making sure that when we work for our money, we do that in an efficient way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting how you kind of incorporated that delegating aspect too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's probably the hardest part, because who is going to be doing the delegating? Me. I have to be inside this head of mine and like fight myself, the ultimate, the final boss, your brain. You have to tell your brain to do things that it may not think are going to be good. And ultimately, when you get into those areas where you're expanding and going into areas that you haven't been, you get into that growth zone type mentality. It gets uncomfortable, and it's really hard to continue to push through that uncomfortable time and push that boundary and continue to grow yourself. But what you will find out is, if you do, you're going to sometimes fail, and you'll have a lesson learned from it. And that's okay, because I'm one of the biggest losers you'll ever talk to probably on your podcast. That's why I'm such a winner. I've taken those losses, I've remembered them, and I've gone on to become better. Everybody in this that's probably listens to this has been sick before, right? Your body lost a battle on that day. But what you did is your body then remembered that in your DNA. It created antibodies, and eventually you won the war. It's a weird kind of correlation there, but we can think about that same thing on the other side. Just because we attempt something in our investment world, our real estate world, our business world, and we're not successful immediately, that doesn't necessarily mean we're a failure. It just means we didn't win on that day. And we can continue to push forward, or we can make ourselves a victim. I choose the glass half full mentality rather than the glass half empty.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it, Ryan. I'm just curious as well, why do you think that maybe some people are a little bit hesitant about making that first step, whether it's, with real estate or stocks or even just trying something new?
I think it goes back to the old saying, you throw what you know. A lot of my real estate investors, when I first start working with them, they tell me up front, and I know this to be the case, hey, I'm primarily going to be real estate. It's what I understand. It's what I know. And so it all comes back to comfortability. Nobody, including myself or you, I think I can speak for both of us here, would volunteer to put ourselves in a vulnerable situation where we don't necessarily understand fully the concept. I don't volunteer to go to the hospital, to go to the doctor. But if I'm not feeling well, there's this point where I say, I got to hang my hat and go talk to a professional. At some point, real estate is not going to cut the bill. Just like on the other side of the coin, for most people that work with a financial advisor are the opposite. They don't have any real estate, right? They do traditional investments. I say the same thing to those people. At some point, there's going to be some tax benefits we're going to get capped out on. Nothing is perfect. One thing and I love real estate. Let me preface that before I say this. I love real estate. If you don't have real estate as part of your investment portfolio outside of the stock market, meaning hard assets, you can touch it. That form of real estate provides tax benefits, cash, unearned income from real estate, rent, in a way that you cannot get from work or investments. It's complementary, it's symbiotic. But I do also know, and I'm not shy to say, that if you pull a balance sheet, no matter how much your home is cash flowing for you, it's a liability because it has hard costs on it. What can be really good to cover some of those hard costs? Our investment portfolios, because then that money is just working for us. Maybe we take some of the money from our rent and put it back into our investment portfolios. So really what I see that works well for people is not pinholing yourself into one asset class at all, because being 100% in the stock market is not the right thing to do either. And I'm sober enough to know that. A holistic financial plan should include real estate, stocks, bonds, ETFs, mutual funds, insurance, cash equivalents, and hopefully somewhere in there, some other stuff. Maybe you have some business interests. Maybe you're making enough money to be investing in businesses. Maybe you're syndicating some of your money, and that's a different form of real estate, but maybe a long hold via syndication. Maybe you're just balling out of control and you want to act like a private lender for somebody. Those are all different verticals for your dollar that all can go to your bottom line. And I just think there's no one right way to do anything. 10 minus 4 equals 6. So does 3 plus 3. So does 5 plus 1. All of those got to the exact same ending a completely different way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, kind of this approach where, even like you said, you throw what you know, right? So even some people will say, hey, I know real estate well, I'm going to only stick to this. Whereas you're talking about that symbiotic relationship where, hey, you look at the big picture and see everything kind of plays together.
Yes. Yeah. And complements each other, because let's just talk about, like, and this is a general term, most of the time, real estate moves inversely to the stock market, like it did this year. And so that's a good hedge. Hey, I have my real estate making me money while one of my investments is kind of not doing good. But what do we do when 2009 through 2011, were real estate investors selling their assets, or were they buying them? They were buying them because they were distressed. They were low. So maybe we take some of the income we're making off of our real estate and buy more of those stocks while they're cheap, while they're on sale. Conversely, sometimes when real estate does bad, the stock market does not. That maybe means that interest rates are going up really high. And so and that's going to be in the future, here in the short term, interest rates start going up. There'll be more inventory on the market. Housing prices will settle down. That's going to calm the real estate market. But when interest rates go up, that's super good for stocks. Super, super, super good for stocks. So stocks will appreciate that way. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had our money in both of those areas? So no matter what happens, we're always on the side of making something. That's the benefit of being diversified. Versus if I say I'm investor A with just real estate, I'm really happy where I'm at right now. But if I've been a real estate investor for the past 10 years, I just got back to where my house was back in 2006, 2007. Just did. Has it been cash flowing me this whole time? Yeah. My equity just got back up to that point though. If I'm a stock investor, hey, my stock is probably back at an all-time high. Maybe it's a good idea to take some of those profits and reinvest them elsewhere into areas that can provide some more benefits. So again, it always comes back to there's not really 100% one way to do anything right. And if anybody tells you that there is, they're probably just speaking from a personal experience. Because I know a lot of real estate investors who have massive portfolios, 400 or 500 doors, and they're doing great, and they don't have a ton of investments elsewhere. When you have 400 or 500 doors, that's a different ball game. The owner of the Sands Casino probably doesn't have a huge, massive stock portfolio because he has a $3 billion casino. So those aren't good comparisons for the regular people like me and you. Most people are going to be like me, and you have $2 to $3 million of real estate, maybe you have $2 to $3 million of investable assets. And if you have both of those and they're split and they're working kind of differently, but in the same way to increase your bottom line, I would argue that's much more powerful than having $6 million in just stock or $6 million in just real estate. Because you can argue that this one's better this way and this one's better this way, but what if we had both of them working together? That really creates financial peace of mind and power for that individual.
Yeah, absolutely. Just curious as well, why do you think most people don't know things like this or see it from this perspective?
Education in the United States about finances is pretty poor. I think that's the case around the world. I mean, they don't even tell you about a credit card. I also think that one of the biggest fallacies, and this is something that needs to get taken care of. When I was 17 years old, I was allowed to sign for $300,000 on student loans. And when I graduated, I probably wouldn't have been able to get a $15,000 business loan. So allowing a non-working student to take on over $250,000 of debt to get a piece of paper, let's be real, and go to high school again for 2 more years, because the first 2 years of college is like high school again. And then that piece of paper, I mean, honestly, guys, ask yourself, because I've asked myself this, what am I using from college? I learned how to act like an adult. I learned how to, be responsible. But most of the stuff I'm learning, or I use, or stuff I learned on my job, like by doing work. So that is a big issue for me. That's probably the biggest issue. Like I said, I think college costs a lot of money, and we don't get a ton of value for it. I'm not saying not to go to college, but I think like the conversation me and you might have with our kids is going to be a lot different than the conversation that my parents had with me. Because when I grew up, it was go to school. If you don't go to school, you're not going to be successful. How many guys do you know with no college degree that are making 6 figures now? The Internet of Things is a massive, massive, massive game changer, because you can learn how to make $1 million a year without a college degree on YouTube. That didn't exist back then. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that sticks out in my mind is the cost to get the education. And then once you get the education, you're like, damn, I'm like $300,000 in debt and I can't even go get any money to do a fix or flip. Hey, I want to get a loan out so I can get a car so I can drive to and from work. The DTI, oh no, you got 300 grand in student loans. So now you got 400 grand in student loans, so you can't work. I think that's kind of a fallacy. So that works against a lot of people in a lot of ways as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how that can be tough, and logically that doesn't make sense. Why you could be able to incur that large amount of debt when you can't pay it back, whereas if you just need 15 grand just to start out, doesn't make sense, right?
No, makes sense for the universities and the private lenders, but not a lot of times the person they're lending money to.
Yeah, of course, Ryan, absolutely. So I'm just curious as well, you mentioned, kind of that financial literacy, not only in the US, but also the world, generally being poor. What does good financial literacy do? So if someone's coming out, what does it look like? If someone is coming out of maybe a public school in America, or even coming out of a university, how can they become more financially versed?
I think, and it's so simple, but a lot of people don't do it. You have to actually like take charge of your own financial future and self-educate. And that's hard, because then, okay, I want to do that. Where do I start? Somebody that I like, a lot of real estate people will start with Robert Kiyosaki, who I think of not very highly for a lot of reasons, but has a really good base book on like, hey, this is if you're a business owner, if you are working for a business, It helps you identify how money works. And he is, to a certain degree, right. That's a good one on real estate. Jeremy Siegel, Stocks for the Long Run. This is how stocks work and how they have worked for the past 150 years and how you can allocate yourself. And here's the data on why saving money in stocks is a good idea. There's a lot of books on like Burr method. I'm a big fan of like Burr method, why that works well for real estate investors. I think what it comes down to though is figuring out where you want to start and then seeing if that area is going to be good for you. So finding a book or something online that discusses in a transparent way, obviously, of how things work and figuring out what is going to be your starting point. A lot of people, and it's been popular for the past couple of years, have been real estate. Hey, how do I get into real estate? How do I do that? You're going to have to educate yourself on what to do. Be wary about online gurus. I would buy a book. It's like $25 and has everything that a guru will tell you for $1,394, some odd price like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Get a book and like read the book. Like this is a book that a lot of my clients end up reading, Power of Zero by David McKnight and Ed Slott. That book talks about how to use investment accounts and life insurance as an asset class to get to a 0% tax bracket in retirement. That's a good way. That's a concept that you would not be taught in school. So educating yourself in areas that mean something to you. And I think you would agree, because I know you probably have done that. Once you kind of you find your niche. Okay, great. I need to go read this book next. Great. I need to then read this book next. Oh, great. Hey, this webinar, it speaks this. You'll kind of organically pick up and start that snowball effect. But it starts with kind of figuring out what area you're trying to be in. So for a lot of, I think, people that will listen to this podcast today, it's going to be real estate investing and general investing. I would say that Power of Zero is a good book. Stocks for the Long Run, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Burr Method, jump on Deeper Pockets podcast, scroll around there, listen to people, like you, like me on their podcasts and what they're doing. Just start to find groups of people and then use your ears and your mouth in ratio, because they will tell you what they did and you don't have to do exactly what they did, but this guy went and, he read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Okay, I'm going to go read that book and see what he got from it. Oh, okay. I took away this. That's going to lead me to this next area. I think that's the way, but I'll ask you this question, Aaron. How much stuff have you self-educated yourself on? Like this podcast, for example. Did you go to a class for anybody to teach you how to do this? No. Yeah. You went out and you figured it out. It was something that was interesting to you. So you spent the time on becoming the expert. I think that if more people thought that about their money versus like trying to go to a music festival or trying to travel, that's all good stuff. And I want to do that too. But like, how can I make my money work for me? If everybody asked that question more often, I think more people would organically find themselves in areas of a trajectory that's upwards. And that, I think, is a question that we're not trained to ask. Nobody tells us to ask. And that's a problem. I took economics in high school and I couldn't tell you one thing from that class. And I would rather have learned, hey, this is how a credit card works. You have to pay this at the end of the month. You don't just swipe it and nothing happens. This is a checkbook. This is why having a checkbook is good, and how you balance it and how you understand how much you're spending. This is how a loan works. You probably want to make sure you get a credit card for a couple of years so that when you go get a loan, you've proved to a lender that you have revolving debt and you're good at paying that revolving debt off. Those things, I wish those were taught, and those are so much more effective than Keynesian or supply side economics, stuff that like analysts need to know, not stuff that me and you need to know. Hey, how do I know if I'm getting a good deal on a loan? How do I know how to read the amortization schedule? How do I know if my APR on my credit card is too high? That stuff is not taught to us. And unfortunately, that's what ends up being, good for corporations and good for big banks and big business, and not good for us. So self-educate yourself. Be an advocate of your bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely, Ryan. It sounds like the premise of what you're saying is a lot about self-awareness, just kind of knowing your starting point, where you potentially want to go, what route you want to take, and then just the practicality of it too, just finding something practical that you can get your hands on and do something with.
Yeah, and if you don't feel like you are in a position to make a decision like that, find the people, put people in your circle that you feel confident can help you get to that level. And sometimes you may have to pay those people. And then it comes to where, am I getting value for what I'm paying? Am I doing, make sure you figure that out. I want to make sure I'm not endorsing to hire a life coach or anything like that. But what I'm saying is, there could be some groups where it's like, hey, we have a membership because the information we're giving is of high value and extremely, that may be a good option. I know one of my clients just joined a group that's like $20,000 a year, but he just went to his first meeting and made almost $1 million in real estate transactions at that meeting. That would be a time where it's like, ding, 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 this is a good value. I'm pretty much paying to get into the room with some heavy hitters. That check that off. That makes sense. But really, find a real estate person and follow them and see what they have to say. Talk to a financial advisor like myself. Look at what you're already doing to make sure it's up to date and it's on track with what you're trying to do. Something that I offer on my podcast quite frequently is we do a financial X-ray for our clients. They can text the number. They can say, hey, Ryan, this is what I'm doing with my investments. Can you do a full financial review and let me know what you find from fees, from performance? Is there anything that I can do to update that? That's a very important thing to do, because just like I take my car in, two to 3 times a year to get maintenance done, your financial plans are the exact same way. You don't want to set something up and then just rotisserie chicken it. You want to set it up, keep an eye on it, and make sure we nurture it, kind of like a garden. If we tend to our garden, we will have a high yield and lots of fruit and vegetables to enjoy. If we do not, probably not the same scenario. So that's kind of a good concept I also tell to people. Find a professional that you can work with that's going to be honest with you, that's going to help you, that's going to work in your best interest, and kind of take your investment game or your work game to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely, Ryan. It's funny. I love that. Was a beautiful explanation you gave, but I can't help but smile because it reminds me of my grandpa. One of the things he always used to tell me was, Aaron, you get what you pay for, right? And it kind of what you're alluding to. It almost sounds like sometimes it's worth it to just pay whatever that cost would be, assuming that value would be there for you.
Correct. And there should be a very good way to ascertain, like for myself, I don't charge for my time, just so you know, guys, but like, how do I know that I should listen to Ryan? Well, if you went to my my reviews and my podcast and you started reading them, I think we have like 1,300 5-star reviews, and they all will say, I called Ryan and I talked to him, and he's not trying to just sell you something. He's here to provide value. Hey, I sent my stuff to Ryan and he went through everything and he gave me a full financial plan. It was great. Didn't cost me anything. People that do what they say they're going to do as well. Because it's one thing, I can get up here and run my mouth all day. And trust me, there's a lot of guys that I could name drop. I probably get some nice cease and desist letters on my desk. They hate me. They don't like me. I'm an outlier in our world because I will head roll people when they don't do things right. But just making sure you work with somebody who is going to be honest with you. They should be able to speak to you just like this. It doesn't need to be all proper, nose up in the air, no suits. I get a shadow too, guys, when I don't shave. I wear hats when I don't do my hair, and I have a sweater on today. That's not dressing fancy is not going to, not that you don't look very good, Aaron, sorry. But my point is, don't be distracted by the flash. Okay. There's a lot of people. I have a client who is an Instagram influencer, and he has millions and millions and millions of followers. And I've had people come up to me and be like, man, he's your client. He must be making $100 million a year. No, he's doing well, but he gives off the idea that he's doing a lot better than he is. Be careful. Instagram and social media can do that. What's the merits? What's the background of the person? If you Google my name on, there's public information. You can see how many assets that I manage. You can see how many clients that I have. You can see people reviewing me. That stuff is important. So whenever you work with anybody, no matter how good they look or what people are saying about them, do some due diligence, do some research on them, have them earn your business. Don't just have them be on a pedestal and fanboy them. Have them earn your business. Have them tell you what they can do. That's very, very, very important. So just, again, doing your due diligence on anything, your D&D.
Yeah, that due diligence is crucial, right? Regardless of who you're working with, you want to know who it is, and how they can get the job done for you and done right.
Correct. Yeah. And like I would tell anybody here, if you guys are listening to this and you're looking to talk to somebody, at least in my world, you don't care if I drop that number, do you?
Please.
It's 844-447-1555. You can text the word X-ray and it will come right to my email. I will respond right to it and ask you if you have any questions, and that's free of charge. There's no cost or obligation to get an X-ray or get a financial review from us. So if anybody wants to take advantage of that, text the word X-ray, XRAY, to 844-447-1555.
Yeah, absolutely, Ryan. Well, is there anything that you haven't said thus far that you'd really just like to hammer home?
Only thing I can leave you guys with today is I'm talking to you at the end of January here. I'm thinking that the market, as far as the stock market, is going to be a little volatile for the next couple months. It should smooth out towards the end of the year. We're going to have a lot different stuff to invest in this year than we did last year because we have a new administration. Check out green stocks all the way around. I think you guys probably know what I'm talking about there, but solar energy. If you're into, I can't recommend it, but if you're into looking at cannabis stock and you can purchase that through your broker dealer, that may be a fun place to look. Energy, electric car makers, check that stuff out, guys. And if you're a real estate investor, stay with your foot on the gas. Interest rates should go up mid to end of this year. When that happens, the money supply is going to tighten up a lot tighter than it is right now. All you got to do is check the 10-year treasury and look at it going up and just know that it's being artificially deflated right now. So when interest rates go up, housing prices are going to cool off. Take advantage of the fact that there's a lot of momentum in the market right now. And if you got to work Sunday through Sunday, I would recommend doing it. So those are my only little things I'll leave with you guys. I definitely appreciate your time having me on. Thank you so much. And like I said, if you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. My Instagram is the best way to get a hold of me. That's at @Breedwell.
All right, Ryan, sounds great. I've really enjoyed our talk. Learned a lot about you, a bit about your background, more what you do, a bit of mindset, and just kind of that, I guess, the money mindset, right?
Yep, making money is always great. It's just better when you do it in a way that you understand, and then you can spread that knowledge to other people, kind of like you do with your podcast and I do with mine. So that's the goal moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely, Ryan. Well, again, thank you so much. You're a wealth of information, and it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you guys.
Talk to you soon.